You are listening to The Overthinker's Guide to Joy, episode 94. This is the one where I get to interview my friend and actor Tim Omundson, where we're going to talk about acting, life, and reinvention. Let's dive in. This is a podcast for overthinkers, overdoers, and overachievers who are tired of feeling overanxious and just want to feel better. I'm your host, certified life coach, Jackie DeGrenis. So today I have a very special guest. It is a longtime friend and somebody I admire on so many levels. I am so tickled that he's here and agreed to do the podcast. And I have had the pleasure of being on his podcast. And today I get the pleasure of returning the favor and hosting him here. He is most well known, although he has been in television and theater for decades. His most iconic role was on a show that I did many, many years ago called Psych, and he played Lassiter. His name is Tim Omundson, and I am so tickled to have him on the show today and talk about all things television, life, philosophy, and whatever else he feels like talking about.
Hello, my friend. I was really honored and tickled that you asked me to come talk to you because I think you are a very incredibly wise person, and I'm really happy to be, if not a little nervous, too, that imposter syndrome that I do come on and talk with you.
Oh, no imposter syndrome at all. All fun and good. So, Tim, we have not gotten to see each other in person in many, many years, but we have seen each other on Zoom and have talked many times on email and all the things. So will you catch me up on what has been happening in your post-psych life, starting professionally with what you are doing tour with your colleagues?
So after the post-psych life, I was lucky enough to get on a show called actually the Psych Musical, which was a pretty transformative episode for a lot of the cast, especially myself, because it really kindled this love of singing and musical theater that I had forgotten that I had. After that, I was able to, through just stupid luck, I got on to, well, also an amazing agent, I got onto a show called Galvan, which was this fairy tale musical comedy from the genius of Dan Fogelman, who did This Is Us, and then with songs written by the great Alan Menken. So that took me to England and Wales, where I played this medieval English king, which was just, the show was like I would say if Mel Brooks and Monty Python had an illicit love affair and they had a baby, this show would have been that baby.
Wow, that's high praise.
Yeah, it was pretty it was just some of the most, I mean, to leave Psych, which was the greatest gift of a show I could possibly imagine happening, and then find my way having to learn how to sing suddenly on that kind of level. And traipsing around England was just an absolute dream.
And what years were this that you were doing this?
2014 and 2015.
Okay, gotcha.
And we only did 2 seasons. We did 18 episodes, but they were pretty glorious 18 episodes.
And is that how you met Dan for a later role in This Is Us?
Yes, that was how I first met Dan.
Wow. So that was great serendipity.
It was an incredible, it's funny just how life turns out. So right after Galva ended around 2015, in 2017, I survived a massive stroke, which took out the left side of my my left arm and hand and foot and leg. And then eventually, so I mean, I was really not in great condition at all.
Can you talk very specifically about how that even happened?
Absolutely, yes.
Because you are, I mean, for not everybody who knows you, you are a young, tall, thin, vibrant, active, playful man.
Yeah.
So people don't expect people who typically are in such good health and have such privileged lives and who travel and do and play for a living to then be struck with a stroke. So I would love you to talk about that.
Yeah, it was. So we say no one expects the Spanish Inquisition. I was 48 years old, 6 foot, 163 pounds, like best shape of my life. Used to hike every day and work out every day. And then what happened was I'd gotten to the point in my career where I was having to take my shirt off a bit more. So I was trying to get a certain kind of shape, and I was lifting weights too hard one day. We're not exactly sure what it was, but we can pretty much pinpoint the moment that what happened is I tore a carotid artery in my right carotid artery, which is a pretty important artery to have because it carries the blood from your heart to your brain.
It's probably the most important artery. Yeah.
Yeah, one of the ones you really don't want to injure.
Yeah.
I tore during a really heavy deadlift lifting weights,
Ah.
and then about a week later, this is where it gets really glamorous. I collapsed in a men's room in the Tampa airport,
Oh my God.
then proceeded to spend several weeks in ICU in Tampa, and eventually recovering enough to the point where I could be medevaced back to Los Angeles, where I was in a recovery rehab hospital in LA. Eventually moving into a therapy, like a residential therapy clinic. So I was in a clinic for about 4 years, having to relearn how to walk and just all like physical, cognitive, and occupational therapy, like all the therapies you can possibly do. I was really lucky in that there was this great neuro rehab center near my home.
Wow. When you tore that carotid artery, it wasn't instantaneous. It took a moment before that Tampa
Yeah,
airport
it took about a
bathroom
week.
incident.
And we sort of like seeing the stars for about a week. And Allison, my wife Allison, constantly like reminds me that I came home and said, I feel like something's weird. Like I thought I just strained my shoulder muscle.
Mhm. Mhm.
But she constantly will go back to me standing in the kitchen saying, something feels a little weird.
Mhm. But it took a week to manifest as a full-blown stroke.
Yeah,
And
so
then how did somebody even find you in the Tampa men's bathroom to
I think
get
what
you to
actually
a
happened
hospital?
so a clot formed, I assume, and then eventually that
Ah,
covered my brain. I think, I mean, I've only played doctors on TVs, but that's kind of
right, right, right.
my
And
base
then
knowledge.
you lost movement on only the left side of your body or your entire body?
It was just my left side. So my left hand and foot and arm and leg went. A little bit of I can't do my standard Lasker left eyebrow raise anymore.
Um, did you lose all speaking ability or some?
No, I lost my ability to sing, and I lost I used to have a very supple voice that had a lot of nuance in it. Now it's a bit more flat and a bit more rather than a scalpel, it's a bit more of a sledgehammer. So, but I'm really lucky in that in so many different ways. But the first ones that really come to mind are the fact I didn't lose my memories. Like
It's
my long term
amazing.
memory is still really sharp,
Wow.
and I didn't lose my total ability to speak. There were a lot of people in this clinic who literally had no vocal range at all.
Right.
So I was lucky in that I could walk. I could kind of roll. Well, I couldn't walk at the time. I was actually two-person lift. It would take me two people to help me get off a couch and into a wheelchair. So I was in a wheelchair for a long time, slowly learning how to re-walk through physical therapy, and eventually, I remember the day there was where I was sort of signed off. They signed off me that I could actually stand at the sink in the bathroom to brush my teeth without somebody watching me to make sure I wasn't going to fall.
Wow.
So
So
that really
that was 7 years ago.
so this yeah my stroke was actually April 29th, 20 yeah it'll be 17 April 29th will be 7 years this year.
Wow.
Gosh, that's just a few weeks away, isn't it?
Yeah. Almost the seventh anniversary. In the last, what period of time has it been that you have been able to start acting again, traveling again, all the things? How did that progression go?
So period of time. So I was in this rehab clinic going doing therapy about several times a week for 4 years. And I finally sort of graduated out of the clinic and I have to look at my notes to see what the date was, but it's been several years now since I've been able to move back home and sort of restart my life back with my wife and daughters in the house. But I was saying earlier, the part of the Gallivant while I was in my recovery, two of my producers, two of my dear friends were sort of checking in on me as I was slowly starting to like, I'll just walk and speak again. And my as my mouth sort of caught up to my brain, as Chris Crescenzi, our friend, would say,
Mm-hmm.
and they were sort of filling in Dan Fogelman on my progress. And I remember being Dan, who of course did the show This Is Us.
Mhm.
And I was at dinner one time with a couple of our producers, and Dan and one of my Gallivant director and producers was there, and we were at one of my Gallivant co-stars' homes. I was in such bad shape that they literally had to lift me in the wheelchair over the threshold to get into the living room, to get into the dining room to have dinner with them.
Mhm.
And we're, Dan and Chris Koch said, well, Chris Koch, who's a producing director on This Is Us, said, yeah, Dan and I were talking. We thought maybe you could be on the show, and it was sort of like it was beyond my wildest dreams really to even get back into acting because I just so kind of didn't know what I was doing.
Mhm.
And I immediately thought, well, yeah, maybe I could be a guy in a wheelchair. Because my left hand doesn't work, I only can push the wheelchair with one hand. So,
Okay.
like traditional, you think of actors in wheelchairs, or you
Right.
think of somebody who uses a wheelchair for mobility. They use two hands to move around.
Yes.
So I can't even do that. But one day I got a text from Dan Fogelman. He said, hey, I'm thinking of writing a guy deep in recovery from a stroke and putting him on This Is Us. And he was like, put me in, coach. So he wrote this guy who basically he wrote me in my present physical condition. Because
Wow.
I had no idea I'd be able to get back to acting in any form. So my first day on set, and again playing this guy, and I just said to Dan, it's like, if we're doing this, I want to show warts and all. I want to show what it really is. Like, I can't pretend my right hand, my left hand works.
Right.
So we need to say like, it's like it is what it is. And I've actually played a couple of stroke survivors now. As my friend said, be honest, did you have a stroke just so you can get on This Is Us?
I hate to laugh at that, but
No,
it is
it's
funny.
of course how actors think of each other.
I
But
know.
so then from that point on, Dan was actually on set with me that very first day, and we became much like our times on Gallivant, where he would just throw me lines, and I realized I'm still. I mean, physically, I may not be what I was, but I was still, my humor was so, I was still funny, and my wit and my comedy chops were still there, even though it takes a little while maybe for the joke to get out my mouth, for everything to kind of
Mhm.
connect. But it became quickly. We kind of realized right away that that all still worked,
That's amazing.
and I was just so incredibly blessed and lucky to have friends who would support me like that. Then, of course, after I think I ended up doing 6 episodes of This Is Us, always playing the same character, and we really got to dive into some of the issues behind it, stroke survivor, which was great, like the emotional part as well. There's actually a thing which with a left brain injury like I have, a left hemisphere injury,
Mhm.
because you're yeah, or right hemisphere. Sorry, no, I have a right hemisphere injury.
I understand because it's your
Because
left
that
hand
affects
that's
you, right? Yeah,
affected, so it crosses over. So it's the right brain, left hand.
exactly.
Right.
So there's something that one of my actually my cognitive therapist let me in on this little secret that over the years they'll say to right hemisphere survivors, what's the one thing that really is the longest sort of lasting injury? And they'll say empathy,
Hmm.
like sort of your ability to sort of feel and express empathy,
Mm.
which is kind of important to have for an actor. It's like it's one of the main tools that an
Mhm.
actor needs. So we actually there was a scene where we got to, in This Is Us where I got to have a little talk about empathy and basically said to Dan, look, if this is the way this is a real thing, and if I can express this, that would be really lovely to do. So I'm kind of mumbling now. So just to get Dan to have Dan say, yeah, I want to let's put it all out there. Let's tell the whole full story. Was just an incredible gift to be able to sort of represent people who've gone through what I've gone through. And I've had a lot of survivors reach out to me since that show aired and just express their gratitude, and not just for me, but for Dan, give me the platform to sort of talk about or to show what happens in this situation.
Well, I think that was the best thing about that series was how many different marginalized people and circumstances, situations he brought to light, whether it
Absolutely, yeah. And
was, infertility, obesity, finding love, narcissism, adoption, premature death, losing a parent, losing a spouse, interracial
anxiety, all that.
marriages, anxiety, like all of it. It was just so rich. It was such a rich tapestry of the human condition. And it was never maudlin and it was never like beating you over the head. And so I think it's so beautiful what he did for all the seasons that he did it on that show. And I was always surprised. I was like, oh, I wonder where they'll go next. Cause I thought, well, they've told their stories. And he just always found more.
It just comes down to just Dan's true humanity is just a human being, and his view of the world and his kindness, and I'm just so lucky that I got teamed up with this man. But prior to the grace that was Dan Fogelman, actually, while I mean I owe a lot to I go to this a lot of times after in terms of talk about my return to sort of my career and how Dan
Hmm.
gave me my career back, but a lot of times I skip over some of the most important people, which was my psych family.
Hmm.
Because actually, when I had the stroke, they were in pre-production for our first psych movie.
I
So
remember.
we did 8 seasons of that show,
Hmm.
and then ended up doing 3 movies. And while we finally got we'd always wanted to do movie. Well, Steve Frank's our creator. I always said it's 8 seasons and 6 movies. So as they were writing, I mean, they're literally in pre-production, and I'm suddenly the wild card that they don't have to be in. Steve and James Rode Rodriguez, who you
Mhm.
know,
Mhm.
holed up in a restaurant across the street from the hotel where we all stayed on the show,
Mhm.
and it was kind of one of our headquarters. And they rewrote the script in 3 days to figure out
Wow.
how to get me in it, which is basically so I could make my health insurance. So their mantra was like, "How can we get Tim to get his health insurance? How can we get Tim paid to get his health insurance?"
Wow.
Just the gift these people give. And then so I showed up to set eventually. Well, actually, no, I didn't show up to set because I was in no shape to travel. I could hardly even walk.
Right.
So they wrote a cameo for me. So they wrote my scene between myself and my partner on the show, Maggie Lawson, which
Mhm.
was just a FaceTime call. Just so it was kind of a cameo, just so I could at least be on screen.
Uh-huh.
And they brought the mountain to Muhammad. So we shot at my guest house. So they set up a little skeleton crew down here, and we came down. We shot just because I couldn't travel, obviously. So but while they were shooting the other parts of the film, I was in really bad shape, literally in a hospital, and they would send me the whole crew. Maggie especially would send me videos of the crews holding up Team Tim signs.
Oh. Oh, that like brings
I
tears to
know
my eyes.
it still gets me.
Oh my gosh.
Just the
Oh my
love and support
gosh.
I've been surrounded by
Yeah.
my colleagues is just like in addition to my immediate family.
Yeah.
Just
And that's an amazing story, I'm sure too. Just Allison, your beautiful wife, being by your side and for the last 7 years and many years before that, but getting you to probably be able to be mobile or somewhat mobile.
the true unsung hero is Allison, my wife, who it's just I mean the fact she stuck it out
Yeah.
where a lot of people necessarily would not have.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. What has changed since the incident 7 years ago? What can you do now that you couldn't do 7 years ago on April 30th?
Right. Well, like where to begin? The fact that I can even walk is the main thing, and I now walk. I mean, I use a wheelchair for longer distances, but then I use a cane for just sort of shorter distance around the house. But even I try not to use the cane a lot, so I can. I've started back up with one of my physical therapists. She'll come once a week and sort of work me out. We've actually walked halfway around the block. We ended up doing half a mile without the cane at all, which still just
Huge.
is astounding. I mean, I remember the day I was in this sort of contraption that holds you up. And when I first started walking, and they said I'd walked 45 yards, which I still couldn't even believe I walked 45 yards. You sort of, like I said, held up in this contraction. So then to walk half a mile without the cane I'm still kind of gobsmacked by it. But I started walking, actually, every anniversary of my stroke, I keep trying to push myself a little more. So last year for the 6 year anniversary, I walked, no, sorry, 2 years ago for the 5 year. I put Maggie Mai's podcast on
Mhm.
in my head, and I started doing laps in my backyard. and ended up walking just under 2 miles
Wow.
for the 5th anniversary. So when 6 came, I said, okay, I need to go past this. So again, I went out in the backyard, put in our podcast, put on some of my favorite albums, my recovery albums. And after 45 minutes, I ended up walking 2.5 miles.
Wow.
So to go from that 45 yards to then 6 years later walking 2.5 miles in one stretch was pretty intensely wonderful. And now, so I'm just trying to continue to build on that and get my gait a little faster
Mhm.
and a little
Mhm.
smoother. So I'm not so lurchy, and I look
Mhm.
more like quote unquote normal.
Mhm. Mhm.
Recovery is a marathon, not a sprint. So I'm looking at the tiny ways I can. It's almost like cognitive behavioral therapy,
Yes.
and looking at it for the overall picture. Ways I can improve my voice and speaking voice, and I'm trying to get my singing voice back slowly but surely.
Amazing. And were you or are you right-handed or left-handed?
I'm right. Luckily, I'm right-handed.
Okay, so at least those elements were already there. You didn't have to retrain your right hand to hold a toothbrush and a fork and things like that.
Yeah, so lucky there, very lucky there, and just slowly trying to slowly build my strength back in my well, just some kind of range of mobility in my left arm, even if it's not even if I can't do it just by thinking of it.
Uh-huh.
So I'm just trying to really everything I can to start either with this massage or just slowly start focusing on my left hand and arm a little bit to really get that one back.
I wish this had never happened to you. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. I certainly wouldn't wish it on a dear friend. If there was a magic wand, I would make it go away if I could
Thanks.
and never have happened. But given that it did, and given that it has given you really kind of a whole new appreciation, I would imagine, for this second chapter of your life, right? Which is the gift of, first of all, life and the relearning of things that, we all learn, like when we're 1 and 2 years old, how to walk, how to talk, how to eat, how to do all the things.
I had to relearn how to chew and swallow
Wow.
because the muscles were so sort of weak in the left side. You can sort of I would pocket food in my cheeks and not really realize it.
Kind of like having Novocaine in that
Yeah,
side of your face.
it
You
was.
wouldn't know it was there. So do you not feel anything on your left side?
Um, I can feel. I can a little bit. I can't necessarily feel when somebody's like holding my arm. But the strange thing is, I can feel temperature of water, especially. There's sort of a
Mm,
heat sensitive or a cold sensitivity.
that's interesting.
Just as the
It's
nerves are sort of like reforming, I guess.
And is there belief that the neural wiring will return with the continued therapy so that you might get movement back? Is that possible?
I think it is. I'm not quite sure on that one. It's called neuroplasticity, which basically the brain
Mhm.
is learning how to rewire itself. Which years ago with stroke survivors, they used to sort of leave. They'd just kind of leave you in bed, and that would
Mhm.
be it.
Mhm.
But now they've realized that the brain actually can sort of rewire and heal and continue to grow and
Mhm.
build on itself. The fact that my left leg is doing as much as I'm walking is sort of proof that that there is something possible to rewire. They say that the fingers and the toes take the longest to sort of come back because they're farthest from the brain.
Correct. And probably also from the heart, so just circulation and blood availability, I would think too, because
Yeah,
I
I would
know
think
that
so.
when you cut your toe or break a toe, can take a while to heal for that same reason, just because blood flow isn't as great.
Yeah, so but I'm still hopeful, and without hope, there's not much point.
So now bring me up to speed on The Psychologists Are In, your podcast with Maggie Lawson, who is your co-star on Psych. Bring me up to, and I've had her on the show as well. So she told a little bit about the history of it, but not too much, how that came to be, and then also the tour that you guys are doing now.
Sure. So Maggie called me one day, and she's still one of my closest friends, and asked me if I would co-host a rewatch podcast with her. Which is funny. She just reminded me this the other day on stage. My initial answer was no, just because I was scared. I didn't know what it meant and how to. I didn't know what rewatch podcast was, and I was sort of scared of the whole Zoom process and the technical process. And so she gave me a week, and then he called me back, and she circled back and sort of explained it. And she said, "I'll take care of it. Just I'll get to the point where you just have to push a button on your computer, and we'll do it." And now it's become the greatest day of my week when we record the episode. And now it's become such a popular thing. We actually are now on this. We did a 9-city tour this year,
Mm-hmm.
which we've attached to sort of Comic Cons and fan conventions where we do appearances together. We'll do a panel and sign autographs and do photo ops and all that sort of
Mm-hmm.
fan show stuff. And we started doing our podcast live on stage
Mm-hmm.
to the point where we first did it at a comedy festival in San Francisco last year, and sold out a comedy club. We sold out a 400-seat comedy club, like almost every night. To the point now we just did a show in Richmond, Virginia, and sold out a 700-seat theater.
Wow.
So it's become this. It's the interesting thing of the comedy festival in San Francisco. My agent came in while Allison was there, and everyone sort of commented as soon as I hit stage and the stage lights hit me, like
Mm-hmm.
a switch flips.
Mm-hmm.
I've become much more alive, much more like I was.
Mm-hmm.
Because I grew up doing theater, so it was that thing of getting back on stage just made me feel alive again in a way that I haven't felt in a long, long time.
Mm.
And then knowing I'm on stage with my best friend, who we've known each other, and we're together for 17 years.
Mm-hmm.
And our comedy rhythms are so tight still, and I knew she would take care of me. So it was just this gift that I wanted to keep building on. So then we've turned it into this tour, which I think we have 2 shows left.
It's amazing.
So now Allison, because I can't really travel on my own anymore. So Allison now travels with me. So we're getting to we started, if it's a city we really want to hang out in, we'll add a few days onto the trip and see and just sort of explore a little bit.
Well, I think that's, again, just kind of an amazing celebration of 7 years later, because 7 years ago, you couldn't travel, whether you wanted to or not. I mean, other than being airlifted back from Tampa to Los Angeles so that you could live in a rehab clinic. And now here you're doing a national tour,
Yeah,
where
we even
you're
have
not just going, but you're showing up live and performing live and with Maggie and in all these different cities. I mean, wow.
yeah, true. It's good, and thank you for kind of reminding me of that. It is because you lose sight when you're forest for the trees sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. And you're, packing in 400, 500, 700 fans, not to mention all those who didn't get tickets and wanted to see it, but you were sold out. And you've got this podcast with a huge following. And again, it's called The Psychologists Are In, for those, if I mumbled through that earlier. It's just amazing. It's amazing that it's the gift that keeps on giving, not just in friendship and not just in career, but just in soul fulfillment.
No, and just to go back, because Psych was, I think Maggie and I were the same mind of Psych was one of the greatest gifts in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly our careers in our lives. I mean, the Psych family that we've all built still. In fact, Corbin Burnson just was our first live guest.
Oh, fun! I love Corbin.
We have a Psych family text thread that Corbin said, and we probably don't. There's probably not 3 days that go past where one of us doesn't check in and sort of say hi to the other.
That's amazing.
It is just this incredible gift that we were given, thanks to Steve Frank and people like you.
Well, thank you.
Jack, we wouldn't be here without you and your great support and your incredible support.
Well, it's such an extreme pleasure, as I've said many times on your podcast and Maggie's. I didn't have to do much because you guys are all so talented and so fun that all I had to do was cheerlead, because it was just fun. It was fun from the beginning.
No, but you were plowing the roads for us, definitely.
Well, thank you. I will receive that compliment, and I thank you for that.
Okay.
Tell me, you had talked a little bit about future projects when I had spoken to you last. Do you have something when this national tour is over? Is there something that we can talk about yet? Is announceable for the next round of tours, or is there something for Comic-Con?
Yes, I mean we're back to Mag and I are going to get together in the next 2 weeks now that we have a little break in the tour and have one of our regular coffee dates and brainstorm what we're doing as we run out of episodes. So we're not entirely sure, but we're also talking about because we share a an appearance agent.
Hmm.
So she's trying to build on the success of the 24 tour, and hopefully we'll do a 25 tour.
Love it.
And we're kind of talking about me even trying to do like some sort of European tour, whether it's through European Comic Cons or we're not sure yet.
Love it.
But there's definitely the podcast is definitely going to grow even past
The episodes.
And ultimately, I think it's whether Maggie and I do some kind of like she's always just had in her head like hosting a variety show. We know we have so many talented, wonderful friends who could pop on this. And she's a tremendous singer, and I'm working my voice again. So my big dream is to get us singing on stage again.
Oh, I'd love to see that. I would love it. When you were doing the rewatch episodes, you did them chronologically, yes? One at a
We start
time?
with the pilot.
Yeah. Okay. Did you have to rewatch each episode prior to your podcast, or did you do it based on memory, or did you sometimes watch it?
No, we absolutely rewatch. Through watching, it'll sort of jog my memory what stories there were.
Okay. Is it amazing how once you watch an episode, how the memories come flooding back, the details of it?
Yeah, it's the memories, like specific memories. We just did one where we were all shooting in Whistler, which we just recorded yesterday, and we were talking about evenings out and like dinners we had with guest cast and but it's really it's not so much the specific memories. It's more the feeling of the joy and love that we all had.
Yeah. Do you ever watch? Because I know I do this, and look, I worked on a lot of television shows over 30 years, but I'll watch something and I don't remember that I've read it, noted it, watched it, rewatched it, renoted it. And I'm like, wow, I don't remember. But then there will be other things I'll see and I know every line. And it's not that I watched that one more. It's just how the brain processes information.
There's some scenes where I'll remember every detail of the scene.
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, but then there's some where like there's episodes where like I'll see the title and go, I have no idea what this episode's about or what happened. So I'll go on IMDb and I'll look who the guest cast was, and that'll before I actually watch the episode, and that'll jog my memory. Like, oh, that's right, because we went to dinner with that person at such and such a place that time.
Yeah. You did so many episodes. I don't even know the total. I know it was
121 total.
120 episodes, not including the movies.
Not including the movies.
Of the 121 episodes, which is kind of amazing, is there one or two that stand out for you? And if you say, no, I can't, I love them all, they're all my babies. But is there one or two where you're like, oh, working with that guest star or having that person who I always wanted to be on screen with, or I always wanted to meet? Was there one or two that you're like, that one? Because I asked Roday this question. I was actually surprised about his answer.
I think the first one was probably Last Night Gus.
Okay, I don't remember who starred in it.
It was our homage to The Hangover.
Yeah. I remember that.
Just because I got to do so much uncharacteristic laughter stuff.
So not specific to a guest star being on it, just that episode for you was the most fun.
Because all of us the cast was also out of our usual comfort zones, and we just had so much fun laughing together.
Okay, so that was your favorite, just in terms of like stretching the muscle for you.
Yes, and then after that would be our homage to The Shining. Here's Lassie.
Oh yeah.
Rodriguez wrote and directed, along with Todd Harthan.
Yeah, that was a good one.
That was just to get to do my Jack homage was a joy. But the funny part being, I'd always said it was the scariest movie in the world to me, and I would never watch it again. And Rodriguez, like, because it's one of his favorite movies.
It is amazing.
He's like, no, you have to watch it, otherwise you'll miss all the jokes. So because I'm such a scaredy cat, the only way I could watch it was flying back and forth to LA from Vancouver, sitting on the plane, early morning flights, bright sunny airline cabin, watching on my laptop, surrounded by people in the sunshine is the only way I could possibly watch that movie. Because it still just scared the hell out of me.
It scared the hell out of me too. You know, it's so funny. We were in Oregon recently visiting our kids, and we just went on this drive up the mountain a bit. And we were kind of, to be honest, we weren't lost. We were just ambling around. We had a couple hours to kill, and my husband wanted to go up the mountain or whatever. And we ended up at this lodge randomly, and it was, I guess it must have been summertime because everybody was wearing shorts. I was probably cold because I'm always cold, but the tourists were all wearing shorts, and it was quite packed. The parking lot was packed, and it was an interesting, apparently it's a very famous lodge. I walk around and I'm like, and I can see that it's a ski resort in the winter. Like they have lifts and ski rental and all the things, but obviously it's closed. It's summertime. So people are uh, bike riding, dirt bike riding and mountain bike riding up and down on the lifts. I'm walking around and I've been to Portland many, many, many times because my kids live there, but I've never been up this mountain. I know I haven't because I know how many times I've been to Portland. And I'm like, ooh, deja vu. And my husband goes, really? Have you ever been here? And I'm like, no, but like serious deja vu. And then we got separated in the lodge. At some point, he had gone downstairs. I had gone upstairs. I thought he was here. He was there, whatever. And then I'm like, no, this isn't deja vu anymore. This is like, I've been here. I've been here. Well, it turns out it was the set for The Shining, or at least the interiors. But there's a scene, I guess there's a famous scene that's in one of the rooms or one of the, it's not the hotel for The Shining, but it was where they shot a big piece of it. And there's some, I'll double check, but they had some signage that said, yes, this looks familiar because I was like, oh, well, there we are.
Because not the actual Overlook, the real Overlook Hotel from the movie was somewhere up in Banff in Canada, I thought, but I could be wrong.
Could be wrong. So now I have to double check. Was any of The Shining, or maybe they modeled, they can't imagine they modeled the hotel because it was 100 years old. The Shining shot in, I don't know what it's called. It's not Portland, but it's outside. The exterior shots of the Overlook were shot at the Timberland Lodge in Oregon. The exterior shots of the Overlook Hotel were filmed at the Timberland Lodge.
Oh, really?
Well, the interiors were filmed at the Elstree Studios in England. And the opening sequence was filmed in Glacier Park, Montana.
Oh, right. Yeah. With the Volkswagen Bug and that scary tuba.
Yeah. So Timberline Lodge was where we were. And it was the exterior hotel. Talk about kind of spooky and scary and awesome. And what I love is I didn't know you were a scaredy cat. That makes me kind of giggle because Rode Rodriguez can't get enough of horror films. He can't watch enough. He can't write enough. He can't direct enough. He can't talk about enough. And so it's so funny knowing how close you guys are. And these two genres are not both love affairs for, or not, I should say, these two genres are not love affairs for both of you, right, because he adores them.
Like it is in his blood. I think his genesis story was his mother took him to see American Werewolf in London when he was younger than most people would see that movie.
Uh-huh.
And it's funny how we have those moments in our life that one just formed his brain.
Yeah.
Of that's what he wanted to do.
I was, I think in high school, and I saw it, and I jumped out of my seat and landed. And I think I banged my head on like the wooden arm rest in the Westwood theaters when I saw it. Like, that's how far I jumped out of my seat when his dead friend is sitting in the movie theater next to him and he turns and sees him decaying.
Griffin Dunn, right? Yeah.
I was like, ah! And he's like, oh, I loved it.
Yeah, the zombie Griffin Dunn, right?
Zombie Griffin Dunn, yes. Zombie Griffin Dunn. I wonder how many people say that. So fun. So fun. So yeah, those were two great episodes. No, I was actually asking a different question, but I love the answer to that question. My question was actually guest star wise. Was there anybody who ever came on the show that you were like, I always wanted to meet with them, or I always wanted to meet them, or I always wanted to work with them?
Yeah, Tim Curry. So the Tim Curry episode
Yes.
still is a really special place. I remember being a kid and watching a television movie version of Oliver where he played Bill Sikes. And it just something I can vividly remember his face in this movie.
Mm.
So then to have Tim Curry on set with us, it was just like, what on earth? What is my life now? This is
Yeah.
insane.
Yeah. I had that feeling when I met him on the series Monk. I had lunch with him one day. We were on the set, and I could not believe that I was sitting next to Tim Curry having lunch. Like, and I remember saying it out loud to him, like, I just can't believe this. And he was very sweet and humble and flattered and charming and all the things
Yes,
he
yeah, just
is.
a lovely everything, all the great British actors you'd want them to be.
What is the line? What is my favorite line in Psych where he's in the back of the car and he says, "I feel like I'm incarcerated in a blueberry"? Is that what the
Yes,
line is?
that car became known as the Blueberry.
Yeah, that was one of the greatest lines ever.
There's
I
another
just
one
loved.
where he's wearing Henry's robe, and he was like, I'm a baby swaddled in like a cloud or a cocoon of cloud or something." But just the joy and twinkle, like the twinkle in that man's eye was just constant.
Yeah. Did he also, I feel like, is it possible? Did I make this up? Did he also suffer from a
Yeah,
stroke?
I was just about to say he's also a stroke survivor as well.
And that was fairly recent also, like in the
Yeah, I want to say he
last
was
7 years.
maybe 9 years ago.
Yeah.
I could be
Mm.
totally off on it, but
Yeah.
actually we share an agent of all great ironies.
That is weird. That is weird irony.
And just from the photos I've seen, I don't think Tim's doing nearly as well as I am.
Yeah, he's quite a bit older too.
The fact that I was as young as I was and as previously healthy as I was had a lot to do with my ability to recover as much as I have.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So again, besides that you're my friend and besides that I'm a fan of your talent and your acting and all the things, one of the reasons I wanted to have you on today was because I love stories of inspiration. And I think your story is so inspirational, not just the incredibly privileged life you have as a wonderful actor who continues to work for decades, but the fact that you had this tragedy strike in your life and that you overcame it. And I know there's still a long road to hoe. I'm
No, but
not
I know.
pretending, but you are traveling, you are working, you are doing what you love, you are prolific, you
And
are
Allison and I went
surrounded.
out to a dinner last night, and there's always the question of like, should we take the wheelchair? Because we're never quite sure what terrain we're going to hit or
Yeah.
how far we'll have to park. And
Yeah.
so we actually did take the chair in, and I was able to walk in and out of this restaurant. And as I got in the car, I was like to go, hey, no wheelchair. Like we just sort of like check their progress that way. And so the
Yeah.
fact that we could do that is that alone is an incredible thing. Where there was I guess when my original neurosurgeon told Allison they weren't like the stroke was so big they weren't sure if I'd ever walk again.
Hmm.
Which I only learned after I walked into a restaurant, sat down to a business dinner with my agent and manager. Allison told me the story, and I was like, "What? I didn't know this."
Wow.
So,
Is
and
there
but
is there any aside from again the physical therapy and coming back to work again and all the things that have been part of the recipe for healing, which no one knows what the recipe for healing is because it's trial and error, right? Because not
right,
everything works for everybody. But your recipe has been determination and physical therapy and rehab um, and obviously getting back to work as much as you could physically manage. Is there any thought or discipline or unusual thing that you adopted or did that was kind of your, I don't want to say mantra. I don't want to oversimplify anything
oh
because I
no,
know that it's a collection. But is there anything that you would share with the audience in our last few minutes together, just that kind of was your guiding light or your beacon?
yeah, I I would say, and but it's like yeah, you actually when you ask me about other projects other than beyond the podcast, you teed me up, which I didn't hit the ball, but I'm actually writing in the process of writing a one man show about my stroke and recovery and just the journey that I've been on, which is I'm co-writing it with a psych alum guest star, my friend Ethan Sandler, and
Hmm.
it's going to be directed by our dear friend James Roday Rodriguez. We were able to rope him in to consult and direct.
Oh, I love that.
So we're one draft into it now, and I'm just trying to, which kind of it just explores the whole experience of what that was and what that meant was. I think my biggest mantra was right from the get go. Not it's a mantra, but my mindset was sitting in the corner and having a pity party isn't going to get me walking again.
Mm.
Which I remember going into my they had an emotional therapist counselor at this clinic, and one of my first sessions in, she said, "How are you?" I said, "I'm great." She goes, "Yeah, that's what I hear. Why do you think that is?" And I kind of, to oversimplify it, which now I'm kind of diving into a little bit more, but at the time my first reaction was, I don't know. I guess my parents were Depression era, so you don't sit and bitch and moan. You just got to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
And then Allison has repeatedly said that had I not had the attitude of moving forward, that to be stronger, she would not have been able to persist. So I
Mm-hmm.
think knowing that we set we had our daughters were really young at the time. They were early in their young teens.
Mm.
We sat them down sort of once I was able to get home again, and just kind of said, "Look, I don't know why this happened, but all I do know is that maybe the greater lesson here is we're not defined by the things that happen to us. We're defined by how we react to them. So if anything, I had to be sort of an example to them of just moving forward. I think, but mantra was, I think, the biggest thing that I always immediately played in my head was that great line from Shawshank Redemption of "Get busy living or get busy dying."
Mm-hmm. One of my favorite movies.
Mine as well. So that's really has been to my heart. And then there was an album that I obsessed over in a really hard way with who's this English musician named Frank Turner, who, when I was working on Galavant, I'd already liked his music, and I strangely became friends. And there was one song in particular off one of my favorite albums of his that I happened to be in England while he was touring with, called "The Next Storm," which is all about persevering and facing the next storm. So that really, like, it went so hard into my heart.
Mm.
This one particular album, and I've spoken about it many times, and so it's going to be in the show as well.
Mm. How wonderful. Can you spell his last name? Frank
Yeah, Turner, Turn.
Ner. Okay. I'd just like to look him up, and other people might too. Um, and then tell me, the dream for the one man show is on stage.
I think ultimately it's on stage, which really came from that first podcast with Maggie being on stage and just realizing how much I loved it. Me going, I got to get back to this. I need to get back on a
Mm-hmm.
stage. That's where I'm most an artist originally.
Mm-hmm.
But
Oh, I
then I
love
think we're
it.
writing it in a way that, and James is such a brilliant director, we can easily transfer it to some sport. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of really funny. I have a photo album on my phone of just my recovery album of just photos and videos. It's funny. There's an actor named Joel McHale who
Mm-hmm.
actually played my dad in the third Psych movie, and is a dear friend of mine, and we and our family and ended up we met. It turns out we grew up 20 minutes from each other in the Seattle area. Met first in LA when our kids went to the same elementary school. So Allison ran into Joel the morning she got the news and was taking an emergency flight to Tampa. Ran into him at LAX in the security line
Hmm.
and told him what happened. And then Joel proceeded to, God, my story really is a story of just love and support from my friends.
Mm-hmm.
Joel would start sending me texts and dumb videos, and
Mm-hmm.
they would hold up my phone, either Allison's phone or my phone, and play me these things while I was in the ICU just to make me laugh. And
Mm.
his first one was, you might have to bleep it out, but Tim, you don't know this yet, but you're fucked. You had a stroke.
That's supportive.
Just, I mean, no, you just no. I mean, it's our
No, you giggled,
yeah,
obviously.
absolutely.
Yes, absolutely. And coming from him, it's
Yeah, it's really good.
hilarious. Right.
Yeah, just so he's been a dear friend, and so there's a lot. So then I've got all these videos that he and I would send each other I was living when I was in the residential portion of the rehab part.
Mhm.
Sort of bored out of my mind. We just send each other videos, just
Mhm.
needed to make myself laugh and to make him laugh, just so I
Mhm.
can keep that funny muscle going.
Mhm.
So somewhere I eventually want to incorporate those in the show, whether it's on a screen behind me, I don't know, but
Absolutely. Did you see Bo Burnham's one man
yeah, I did. Yeah,
show on Netflix? Yeah. He that was, I mean, a little long but extraordinary in terms of what he achieved in terms of color, sound, you know, um
I've been
mood.
on a big sort of a solo show
Uh-huh.
consumption
Yeah.
motion right now, and but really it was the whole impetus was me getting back on a stage doing what I started out doing,
Yeah. I love
standing on
that.
stage telling people stories and hopefully make them happy or laugh or cry or change their lives.
Well, you have a huge audience, including me, who's waiting for this one man show. So you need to get a move on and get it done.
You're right. Actually, I held myself to the fire. I actually announced it on the podcast with Maggie and said, "Okay, I'm now saying this out loud,
Yeah.
so I need to make sure it happens."
Yeah. Because you said it to me in passing a few months ago, but just very sort of under your breath. And now it has to happen.
So, like I said, Ethan and I are one draft in. No, I need to get back together. And James has now moved to New York, so we're kind of trying to coordinate him being in town and us really getting to work.
Yeah. We're waiting for it.
Okay. Which part when you emailed and asked me to be on the show and that talked about this might be one of the topics I thought this would be a really great impetus because it's kind of gone on the back burner a little bit because with being so busy touring that
Yeah.
I thought this would be a really great impetus to have this conversation with you to kind of remind me of why I'm doing this thing and what I'm trying to do.
It's important. It's important because it happened to you, and it's important because it's inspiration for a lot of people who have, again, you said, you know, I said unfortunate circumstances that we don't foresee. You said we didn't see the Spanish Inquisition coming. Like it
Yeah,
doesn't matter what the situation is. It's important, and I think that again, having whether it's a rags to riches story, whether it's a recovery story, whether it's a I was going to give up and then this fabulous thing happened story. Those are the those are the stories I love, and those are the stories that I was going to say lead us all to feel inspired and do more and believe when we feel stuck. So
and
we
when
need
you
you to tell this story.
when you came on the podcast where you were kind of a guest on Maggie and Mai's podcast, you talked about how your love of stories and
Hmm.
storytelling, and that really did that was like one more spur in my side to really get this thing on on it up on its feet, literally and physically.
Well, now I'm going to send you a weekly email and be like, "How we
Please do.
doing?"
I would love it.
I'm going to hold your feet to the fire as
Yeah,
a coach.
eventually I'm gonna start getting emails from you saying I need pages.
I need pages. I have some notes.
I'll
All right,
take them.
Tim, I want to thank you so much for taking the time. I know you've been super busy with your travel schedule, and it was great that we even got this on the calendar. And I just am so happy to see you and talk to you and connect with you and hear your story. And I hope on the 7th anniversary, you're at 3 miles and on a second draft of your one man show.
I'll take it. Right, Jackie, I thank you so much for asking me to come on and talk to you. I've always been a huge fan of yours and admirer of yours, and I know Allison loves you dearly, and our time together in the last 10 years has been brief, but the times we have gotten together in the same room, we're very quality times. So, and even just on the Zoom times we with your show, my show, anytime I'm thrilled every time I get an email from you. So thank you for having me on.
Well, you're going to get one next week.
Again, just the subject will be pages question mark exclamation point.
Exactly. All right. Tim, thank you again. Have a great week. And I so appreciate you being here.
I appreciate you having me here.
We'll talk soon.
Bye bye, sweetheart.
Bye bye. If you would like to learn more about working with me as a coach, you can connect with me through my website at jackiedegrenis.com. That's JACKIEDECRINIS.com.